There's something uniquely captivating about abandoned schools when you're filming, you know? Oh, sorry, habit. What I mean is when you're trying to capture that perfect shot, that perfect eerie atmosphere for your channel. These places just deliver. All those empty classrooms, silent hallways, forgotten memories. It's gold for urban exploration content. Lincoln High, though, that place had been on my list for ages. Supposedly shut down for over a decade. I finally got a chance to get in one night last fall, camera gear ready. What I found in the auditorium wasn't just good content, it was genuinely unnerving. Getting in was the usual drill for these older spots. Found a loose board on a back window near the old gymnasium. Slipped inside. First thing I did was get my main camera rolling, headlamp on, spare batteries in my pocket. The air inside was thick, that classic abandoned building cocktail of dust, damp plaster, and something vaguely metallic. All right, folks, I remember whispering to my mic. We are in Lincoln High. Place looks like it hasn't seen a student in years. Let's see what secrets it's holding. The hallways were incredible. Long, dark, lockers lining them like silent, rusted sentinels, many hanging open. I got some great shots of classrooms, desks overturned, textbooks splayed open on the floor, dated posters still clinging to the walls. Moonlight was filtering in through the grimy, boarded-up windows, creating these amazing, creepy shafts of light. Perfect atmosphere. My footsteps crunched on debris, echoing way too loudly in the silence. It's that silence that really gets you in these places, makes every little sound jump out. After about an hour of filming the usual classrooms and admin offices, I found the double doors to the auditorium. Massive things. One was slightly ajar. Okay, guys, I said to the camera. This is what I really wanted to see. The heart of the school, right? I pushed the door open with a loud, protesting groan of old wood that echoed like crazy. The space inside was immense, pitch black beyond my flashlight and camera light. I panned around slowly, trying to capture the scale of it. Rows and rows of empty seats stretching away into the darkness, all facing the huge shadowed stage. It smelled even mustier in here, like old velvet and decades of dust. The silence was different too. Heavier, like the stage curtains were soaking up every tiny sound. It felt expectant. You almost feel like you should whisper. I walked down the main aisle, my camera steady, narrating softly. Incredible. Look at the size of this place. Imagine this filled with students, the noise, the energy. Reached the front, found some rickety wooden steps at the side of the stage, and climbed up carefully, describing everything for the eventual video. Standing on that stage, looking out at the sea of empty, shadowed seats, it was a genuinely powerful feeling. Like being on display for an invisible audience. My light caught a massive, dark shape under a heavy dust sheet in one corner. Had to be an old grand piano. The main stage curtains, a deep, faded red, hung thick and still. Prime spot for some creepy shots, I muttered, more to myself than the camera. That's when I heard it. A very soft sound. Coming from backstage, I thought, or maybe the wings on the far side, a faint scraping, like something light being dragged a few inches across a wooden floor. I froze, killed my main flashlight, leaving just the camera light on, trying to pinpoint the source. Listened hard, silence again. Just the faint hum of some electrical something from way outside the building, maybe. Okay, probably just the building settling, I whispered to the camera. Or rats. Always rats in these old places, right? But I didn't really believe it. The sound had felt too distinct. Of course, the Urbex content creator in me, the one looking for that money shot of something unexplained, pushed me forward. Gonna check it out, guys. Wish me luck. I moved slowly across the dusty stage, towards the heavy velvet curtain leading to the backstage area on the side the sound seemed to come from. The air back there was even colder, and the musty smell was stronger. Pulled the curtain aside. Whoa, dark back here. My camera light struggled to penetrate the gloom. It was a maze of ropes hanging from above, stacked pieces of old scenery, shadowy corners everywhere. I swept the light around. Hello? I called out softly, mostly for the camera's benefit, to build a little tension for the viewers. Anyone back here? Just filming. No harm intended. No reply. Just more silence. Deeper silence, if that was possible. Then, as I was panning the camera across a stack of what looked like painted canvas flats for old school plays, the light caught something on the floor, a footprint. A single clear footprint in the thick dust. Not mine. I had different tread. This was a sneaker print, maybe a bit smaller than mine, and it looked fresh. Like really fresh. The dust around it was undisturbed. Okay, guys, I whispered, zooming in with the camera. Now, this is interesting. Definitely not alone in here, or at least someone's been here very recently. And right on cue, as if summoned by my words, the main stage lights, those huge ancient spotlights high up in the rigging, flashed on. All of them. For maybe 2-3 blinding seconds. The sudden, intense white light washed out my camera view, making me throw a hand up to shield my eyes. Then just as suddenly they flickered off again, plunging me back into the disorienting darkness, spots dancing in front of my eyes. My heart absolutely hammered against my ribs. That was not a coincidence. That was not faulty wiring randomly deciding to blaze on then off. That felt like a signal, like someone flipping a switch. A very clear "you're not welcome" or "I see you" signal. I didn't need another hint. Okay, nope, we're out of here, I said, maybe a bit too loud to the camera already backing up. Show's over, folks. I spun around, intending to bolt. And as I did, from the direction of the stage itself, just beyond the heavy velvet curtain I'd been about to pass back through, I heard another sound. Not a scrape this time. It was the distinct, unmistakable rustle of that ancient, heavy stage curtain. A long, slow swish, like someone large had just brushed past it from the other side. Or was standing right there, moving it slightly, watching me. That was it. I didn't even try to get a shot of it, just turned and ran. Stumbled blindly through the dark backstage passages, not caring about the noise. Just desperate to get back to the main auditorium, back to the doors. Burst out from behind the curtain, onto the stage, across it in a few frantic strides, down the rickety steps, not even glancing back. Ran up the main aisle, through the rows of silent, waiting seats. Pushed through the heavy auditorium doors, back into the slightly less terrifying school hallways. Didn't stop until I was back at that busted side door near the gym, squeezing through it, out into the blessedly cool night air, gulping it down. Safe. Out of the building. That was the escape. The immediate danger, or the overwhelming feeling of it, was over for the moment. Leaning against a tree, trying to catch my breath, I looked back at Lincoln High. Dark. Silent. Just an old, abandoned school. I even checked the footage on my camera later. The footprint was clear. The lights flashing on totally whited out the sensor, then back to dark. The rustling curtain? Nothing visible. Just the sound, maybe if you cranked the audio. So what was it? Another explorer I spooked. A squatter who didn't appreciate me filming their spot? Or just the old building playing tricks? Its sounds and shadows magnified by my camera and my imagination? The mystery, the not knowing, that's what sticks with you. The feeling I got wasn't like a ghost story. It felt human, Like, I'd stumbled onto someone else's stage and they really didn't appreciate the audience. Makes you wonder what your camera doesn't see in those dark, silent places. Abandoned libraries have this unique kind of sad magic, don't they? All those books sitting on dusty shelves, unread for years, their stories just waiting. It's like a silent symphony of forgotten knowledge. The old Oak Valley Public Library had been a local legend since it closed down after a massive flood about 15 years ago. They just never reopened it. Boarded it up, left everything inside. I always wanted to get in and see what secrets it held. My Urbex channel, Silent Stories, focuses on places just like this. One overcast Saturday, I finally found a way in a rotted out window frame in what used to be the children's section. The air inside was thick with the smell of decaying paper, mildew, and damp earth. Sunlight struggled to pierce the grimy, boarded up windows, leaving most of the vast main reading room in heavy shadow. My flashlight beam danced across towering wooden bookshelves, most still surprisingly full of books. Though many were water damaged at the lower levels, their pages swollen and stained. Dust lay like a shroud over everything. The silence was absolute, the kind that presses in on your ears, broken only by my own careful footsteps on the warped wooden floor and the occasional drip of water from the damaged ceiling high above. It was peaceful in a very melancholy, slightly unnerving way. I started filming, narrating softly for my viewers. Alright team, we're inside the Lost Library of Oak Valley. Look at this place. Incredible. I wandered through the main aisles, pulling out random books, their pages brittle and yellowed, sometimes sticking together from old dampness. Old novels with forgotten titles, dusty history texts, collections of poetry no one remembered, just soaking in the atmosphere of lost words. I made my way to a quieter section towards the back, what looked like it might have been a local history or research area. Smaller, more cramped shelves here, filled with more obscure, older-looking volumes. It was darker here too, further from the few windows letting in any light. That's where I first noticed something a bit odd. On one of the shelves, an old leather-bound history of the county was pulled out slightly from the others, lying on its side. Nothing too strange about that, right? Maybe another explorer had looked at it, left it that way. But then, on the shelf below, another book, a slim volume of local folklore, was similarly out of place. And another, on the shelf across the narrow aisle, a tattered old almanac. It wasn't just random disarray. It felt intentional, like someone had been going through this specific section, pulling out these specific books and leaving them marked. My curiosity, always a strong pull for me, got the better of my caution. I picked up the first book, the county history, gently opened it. It fell open naturally to a specific page near the middle, as if it had been left that way, or opened to that page many times. And on that page, a single paragraph was underlined in faint, faded red ink. It described an old local legend, a half-forgotten story, a series of unexplained disappearances in the Oak Valley area back in the late 1800s people, who supposedly just vanished without a trace near the Blackwood Forest, which bordered the back of these very library grounds. Okay, creepy, but just an old story, probably. I picked up the second book, the collection of local folklore. It too fell open easily. Another underlined passage, this one a short, cryptic poem about secrets the earth keeps, and whispers carried on the night wind from the woods. Starting to see a theme here. The third book, the old almanac, had a section on local weather. Patterns from the 1890s underlined specifically a period of unusually heavy fogs and storms, alongside a handwritten annotation in the margin. A tiny, almost invisible question mark next to a note about unusual activity reported by trappers near Blackwood. A little shiver, not entirely unpleasant for a content creator looking for atmosphere, went down my spine. This was definitely not random. Someone had been here, carefully marking these specific passages, connecting them. Was it a game? Some kind of treasure hunt left by other explorers? Or was it a message? But for who? The red ink looked ancient, faded almost to brown. But the way the books were left open, pulled out just so, that felt more recent. Like someone had been here not too long ago, arranging them, maybe rereading them. I started actively looking for more, and I found them. Maybe a dozen books in that small research alcove, all pulled out slightly, all open to pages with passages underlined in that same faded red ink. Each passage, on its own, was just a snippet of local history, folklore, or nature observations. But read together, in the order I seemed to be finding them, they started to tell a story. A very fragmented, very unsettling story. It hinted at something dark hidden in the Blackwood forest. Something that called to people, something connected to those old disappearances, something that waited. My heart was beating a bit faster now. This was great footage, sure. Okay, folks, I've whispered to the camera. This is getting seriously weird. It's like someone left a trail of breadcrumbs, or maybe a warning. Then I found the last book in the apparent sequence. It was tucked away on a bottom shelf, almost completely hidden behind a fallen stack of pamphlets. It was a very old, plain, untitled ledger, the kind used for record keeping. This one didn't have any underlined passages in red ink. Instead, several pages near the end looked like they had been torn out, jagged edges remaining. And on the very last remaining page, scrawled in what looked like fresh, dark pencil, definitely not faded red ink, was a single, crudely drawn symbol, a circle with a kind of jagged, arrow-like line piercing through it. And below it, one word also in fresh pencil, listening. Okay, that was a whole different level of creepy. Listening. Who was listening? What were they listening for? And that symbol, it felt vaguely familiar, like something I'd seen in a dream or a nightmare. This felt like I'd stumbled into the middle of someone else's creepy research project. Or maybe something more active. The silence of the library suddenly felt charged, watchful. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper, more active. I carefully put the ledger back, trying not to disturb anything, my fingers suddenly feeling cold. But the image of that symbol, that one stark word, listening, was seared into my mind. I needed to get out now. This had gone from interesting urbex to something that felt potentially unsafe. As I turned to leave the research alcove, making my way back towards the main reading room, I heard a sound from one of the tall, shadowed aisles further towards the front of the library. A soft thump, like a heavy book falling flat onto the wooden floor from a high shelf. I froze, listened intently. Dead silence. Was it just an old book finally succumbing to gravity after all these years? Or had someone else, the person who left that pencil mark, the one who was listening, made that noise? Were they in the library with me right now? Didn't wait to find out. Didn't call out. I moved as quickly and as quietly as I could, back through the towering aisles of silent, watching books, my own footsteps echoing way too loudly on the creaky floorboards, despite my efforts. Every dark alcove, every shadowed corner seemed to hide a figure. Reached the main entrance area, headed for the broken window in the children's section I'd used to get in. Just as I got there, I heard another sound. A faint rustle of paper from one of the nearby aisles I'd just passed. Like someone slowly turning a page, very slowly, very deliberately. I didn't look. Didn't hesitate. Just scrambled out that window, dropped onto the soft, damp earth outside, and ran. Didn't stop until I was blocks away, heart pounding in my chest, images of underlined passages, that strange symbol, and that final chilling word, listening, flashing in my head. Getting out of the library, away from the immediate unknown, that was the escape. The resolution to that particular moment of fear. But the mystery of those marked books, that symbol, that final word, it stayed with me, a deep, lingering unease. Who was curating that strange, fragmented story of local dread? What were they listening for soon? What were they listening for now? Were they in the library with me that day, silently watching me discover their trail? Or had I just missed them by moments? The questions are persistent, unsettling echo. It made me realize that abandoned libraries aren't just full of forgotten stories on paper. Sometimes new unsettling ones are still being written in the shadows and the margins in fresh pencil, waiting for the next curious explorer to stumble upon them. And sometimes those stories feel like they have an ending you really, really don't want to be around for. I haven't uploaded that footage yet. Still trying to figure out what I actually found. Community centers, the ones that have been shuttered for years, always have this weird echo of past gatherings, don't they? Oh, wait, trying not to do the question thing. What I mean is these places built for laughter, for town meetings, for local talent shows. When you walk into one that's been silent for decades, like the old Oakwood Community Center on the forgotten side of town, it feels like stepping into a memory that's slowly crumbling. I filmed these disused spots for my channel, hollow holes, always trying to capture that feeling. Oakwood had been on my list for a long time. What I eventually found on its dusty little stage wasn't just decay. It felt like a performance still waiting for its cue, with one very unsettling star. The building itself was a classic red brick two-story, probably put up in the 50s or 60s, now looking tired and neglected. Most of the ground floor windows were heavily boarded, but I'd scouted it before and found a back service door near what used to be a kitchen delivery entrance. The wood around the old lock was rotted through. A bit of firm pressure and it gave way with a reluctant groan. "All right, explorers," I whispered into my camera mic, my headlamp beam slicing through the thick, musty gloom. We're inside the long-closed Oakwood Community Center. This place used to be the heart of the neighborhood, hosting everything. Let's see what it looks like after all these years of silence. The interior was pretty much what you'd expect from a structure left to time for so long. A main hall with a faded bingo board still nailed crookedly to one wall, old plastic chairs stacked haphazardly in a dusty corner. A smaller room off to the side held the remnants of what looked like a children's art class from a bygone era. Dried up paint pots, glitter spilled and ground into the cracked linoleum-faded construction paper shape still, taped to a disintegrating bulletin board. Everything was coated in that thick, soft layer of gray dust that muffles sound and seems to preserve moments. It was sad, a little poignant, perfect for capturing that forgotten places atmosphere for the channel. Then, at the end of a short, shadowed hallway, I found the double doors to their little theater. Or maybe it was more of a multi-purpose hall that had a proper stage at one end. The doors were heavy, padded with some kind of faded vinyl, and creaked open into a room filled with maybe 100 dusty, upholstered seats, all facing a small, dark stage. The air in here was particularly still, very heavy, and it smelled strongly of old fabric, settled dust, and something else. Something faintly sweet and almost Perfumey? Like ancient stage makeup, perhaps, or decaying paper decorations. The silence in here was profound, almost like a physical weight pressing down. Whoa, I said softly to the camera, panning slowly across the rows of empty seats. Look at this. A perfect little community theater, just left behind. My voice, even as a whisper, seemed to echo slightly in the tomb-like stillness. I'm always drawn to empty stages. There's just something compelling about them. I made my way down the center aisle, my sneakers making soft crunching sounds on the threadbare, dusty carpet. Climbed the short set of wooden steps onto the stage. It creaked ominously under my weight, but felt solid enough for careful movement. I turned and looked out at the rows of shadowed, vacant seats. That familiar feeling of being on display, even to an entirely empty house, made the skin on my neck prickle. Prime spot for some atmospheric shots, I narrated for the camera, keeping my voice low. The stage itself was mostly bare. Some old, tattered black curtains hung at the back, looking like they might disintegrate if you so much as breathed on them. A few coiled, dusty ropes lay in a corner, probably for raising and lowering scenery that was long since gone. But right in the very center of the stage, directly under where a single spotlight might have once shone, sat a single object. It was a child's rocking horse. Not one of those cheap plastic things you see everywhere. This was old, very old, beautifully carved from dark wood, though the paint was faded and chipped in places, revealing the lighter wood underneath. It had a flowing, carved mane, wide, staring glass eyes that seemed to catch and reflect my flashlight beam with an unnerving intensity, and a worn, cracked leather saddle. What made it so striking, so utterly out of place, was that it was the only thing on the entire stage, and it looked clean. Much cleaner than anything else in the entire building, almost as if it had been recently wiped down, or was somehow resisting the decades of dust that coated everything else. It faced the empty seats, perfectly centered, like it was the star of some solitary, eternal silent show. Okay, that is genuinely strange, I commented to camera, zooming in slowly on the horse. Why would this be left here? And right in the middle of the stage, looking so cared for, almost compared to everything else in this forgotten building. I walked around it slowly, filming from different angles. It didn't seem particularly damaged, just aged and well-crafted despite its years. Those glass eyes, they really did seem to follow my light. Or maybe that was just the way the light hit them, the way old glass can sometimes look. As I was filming it, getting a close-up of one of its unblinking, polished eyes, I heard a sound. Very faint, but distinct in the heavy silence of the theater. Coming from the seating area out in front of me. A single, soft cough. The kind someone makes when they're trying to clear their throat quietly, trying not to be noticed. I froze instantly, camera still pointed at the horse, every muscle of my body tensed. I held my breath, listened, silence. Just the low hum of the wind outside, barely audible through the thick walls of the disused building. Did you guys hear that? I whispered to the mic, my voice suddenly very low and tight. Swear, I heard someone cough out there in the seats. It had to be my imagination, right? The power of suggestion in a creepy, silent theater. I told myself it was the old building settling, an animal outside, anything but what it sounded like. I mean, who would be sitting out there in the dark in those dusty seats, watching me film a dusty old rocking horse? It made no sense. I tried to focus back on the rocking horse, talking to the camera again. Maybe about its craftsmanship, its strange placement, anything to fill the silence, to distract myself. But my attention kept being pulled towards the dark, silent auditorium. The feeling of being watched was intense now. Not just generally watched, like you often feel in these derelict places, but specifically observed. From out there, from those silent, empty seats. Then another sound. The distinct, undeniable creak of an old theater seat. Like someone, unseen in the darkness, had shifted their weight, making the springs groan. It came from the middle section of seats, maybe halfway back. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Okay, no, that was not the wind. That was not the building settling. That was a seat. A theater seat, designed to hold a person. Hello? I called out, my voice louder than I intended this time, cracking just a little. Is anyone out there? I'm just an explorer, filming for my channel. I can leave if this is your spot, no problem. Silence. Utter, complete silence. Not even the wind now. It felt like the whole theater was holding its breath, waiting. For what? For me to do something? For me to approach? I stayed on the stage, rooted to the spot, flashlight beam still sweeping nervously across the empty seats. The rocking horse stood silent beside me, its glass eyes seeming to stare out into the darkness too. As if it knew something I didn't. As if it was part of this silent audience. Then I noticed something. Or I thought I noticed something. The rocking horse, wasn't it facing just a fraction of an inch more to the left when I first came on stage? Hadn't its carved wooden head been angled just a tiny bit differently only moments ago? No, impossible. I was just tired, spooked. It's an old wooden horse on an old wooden stage. Floorboard shift. Vibrations from my own movement, right? I quickly tried to check the footage on my camera's small flip-out screen from when I first approached the horse. The angle was slightly different. It was hard to tell for sure if the horse itself had moved. The footage was a little shaky there too. My hand probably not steady. Inconclusive. Of course it was. How convenient. The feeling of being watched intensified. It felt like an entire audience was out there now. Silent. Invisible. All eyes fixed on me and the horse. And the horse itself. It just sat there, the centerpiece of this disturbing, silent play. It felt less like a forgotten prop and more like a focal point. Like bait, or maybe it really was the star of the show. Then a louder sound. From the wings, to my right, where the heavy stage curtain led off stage into darkness. The curtain rustled significantly. A long, slow swish of heavy fabric, as if someone large had just pushed past it from the other side, or was standing right behind it, making it move as they watched me. That was my absolute limit. No more trying to rationalize. No more filming for hollow hulls. I grabbed my camera from its small tripod. I set it up to get a steady shot of the horse, slung my bag over my shoulder, and got off that stage. Didn't use the steps this time, just jumped down onto the main floor, landing with a thud that echoed way too loudly in the charged silence. Didn't look back at the horse, didn't look back at the curtain, just ran. Up the aisle, towards the double doors leading out of the theater. Pushed them open, stumbled out into the relative normalcy of the dusty community center hallway. Didn't stop. Retraced my steps as fast as I could, back through the empty game rooms and meeting halls, towards the broken back door I'd used to enter. Slipped out into the cool night air, heart pounding in my chest, like it wanted to escape its cage. Getting out of the Oakwood Community Center, away from that silent theater and its solitary, unsettling prop, was the escape. The immediate danger, or the intense feeling of it, was over. That was the resolution for that moment. But the memory, it's incredibly vivid. The beautifully carved rocking horse on the empty stage, the feeling of an unseen audience. The cough, the creaking seat, the rustling curtain, and that awful subtle doubt about whether the horse had actually moved a fraction of an inch all on its own. Was it all just my imagination, amplified by the creepy atmosphere of a long disused theater? Or had I stumbled into some kind of strange silent performance that happens every night in that forgotten place? I don't know. I never went back to find out. And the footage I got, it's unsettling for sure. But it doesn't capture the feeling of being there. The feeling of being watched by something you can't see in a play you never auditioned for with a prop that seemed to be a star in its own right. Some community centers, I guess, just never truly stop putting on a show.